Good morning, everyone. Happy Columbus Day weekend to you all, and those of you who are still working, I hope that you have tomorrow off. But if you don't, as the Seinfeld episode says, no soup for you. So, some of you may know that before I entered seminary over 7 years ago, I was the music director at St. Patrick's Parish in Natick and St. Linus Parish in Natick. And it was a great job. I loved it very much. And some of my responsibilities were to provide music for the weekend masses, to make sure everything was covered, made sure we have musicians, cantors, and also to make sure weddings were covered, holy days were covered, that everything was covered musically. And it was good, but also a majority of my week when I was in that job was providing music for funerals, funeral masses. And every parish is different. Some parishes don't have many funerals, and others have a lot of funerals. And St. Patrick's in Natick particularly had a lot of funerals. So most of my week I would have anywhere between 3 and 5 funerals that I would be providing music for. And after a while, I began to become a little depressed and sad because I was doing so many funerals, and especially because I'm from Natick, I knew a lot of these families, and I knew a lot of the deceased that were coming to the parish. And so that was a time in my life where I really had to figure out, how am I going to deal with these emotions that I'm having? How am I going to deal with so much death? It's a part of my job, I have to do it, but I have to figure this out. And after a while, I kept saying to myself, I keep saying, how am I going to figure this out? What am I going to do? And later on, I realized that I wasn't bringing the Lord into that experience. I wasn't bringing the Lord into some of that sorrow that I was experiencing. And I can think about many times in my life, some of the most sorrowful times of my life, some of the lowest times of my life, and also some of the highest, most joyful times of my life. In the joyful times, I didn't always thank God. I wasn't always grateful to God for the many blessings He had given me in a certain time. And then other times I was. And in the sorrowful times, sometimes I tried to take that weight all by myself and wouldn't bring the Lord into that. Maybe that can resonate with some of you, because we all have great experiences in our lives, blessed experience, wonderful memories. Life can be so beautiful, but as you know, life can also be very, very sad and very, very sorrowful. And so the thing for us to think about today is, are we bringing the Lord into every situation, every sorrowful situation, every happy situation? The good and the bad. So the gospel today that we're hearing, we're in week 3 of Matthew's gospel talking about the vineyard. And there's some harsh words in there. For example, the vineyard will be taken away from you. The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. And if we think about this, the vineyard is not being taken away from us. Rather, we have walked away. We haven't let the Lord come into our lives. We haven't let the Lord penetrate those parts of our lives that He needs to be a part of. And as we know, the Holy Spirit has a job to do. Jesus has a job to do. And if our hearts are closed to what graces can come to us, the Holy Spirit will move on to another place where it will be accepted. I think about the time Jesus walked the earth and how many people rejected Him. The Jews, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the kings, the emperors, all of these people. Even Jesus' apostles didn't quite understand at first what Jesus was trying to do. Even Peter denied Him 3 times. And so Jesus had to move on to bring His love to someone who was ready to accept it. Jesus never walks away from any of us. Rather, we have to work within ourselves to make ourselves clear, to make ourselves open to receive that gift. And I think we can do that in 2 ways. The first being, we have to prepare our souls. We have to empty our souls from sin and all this other stuff that surrounds us in this world. Perhaps now's the time for someone here to go to confession. Now is the time to confess something that's sitting on your soul, something that's in your heart that you need to let go of, that God needs to take from you. Now is the time to forgive someone Now is the time to pick up the phone and call someone that you've avoided calling because of something that happened years ago that you just can't get past. We need to prepare our souls through the sacraments of the church, confession, Eucharist, but also in our relationships with others. And once we have done that, then we have to take the next step further. We have to invite the Lord into our hearts and into our souls in the good times and in the bad times. And when we do that, we can take the words from St. Paul in the second reading today. Have no anxiety. Have thanksgiving for the blessings God has given you. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to experience sorrow, we're not going to experience sadness, but if we're bringing the Lord into every part of our lives, we can be confident that that core within ourselves, that spiritual core, is nourished and strong and will give us the strength that we need to persevere in this life. And so this week, may you and I look at how we can continue to cleanse our souls, to cleanse our souls, and how we are going to invite the Lord in each part of our lives.